Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. Welcome to today's episode of How Are You Getting Fucked? I'm your host, Louis Rossman, and this is my co-host, Blackberry the Kitty. You're just going to sleep instead of stand up for the video? Well, I guess you're the star. You get to do what you want. Today we're going to be following up on a video that I did on Volkswagen and how they were limiting people that use their products. If you buy a Volkswagen car, before, you used to be able to use an application called Home Assistant to access your car. Home Assistant is a great open source application that's made for the Internet of Things, except it's not a piece of shit. It's open source, so you can see the source code. You can see and verify that they're not selling your data. Because it's open source, they can't rug pull anything. If they decided to say, hey, now you got to pay a monthly fee for it to work, it being open source, somebody could literally delete the code that is putting that lock into place and just continue using it. It's curated by the community. So for whatever features you want, you don't have to wait for Volkswagen to code the features you want. Oftentimes the community codes them themselves, and it had a lot of features in it that were not present in the stock Volkswagen app. If you wanted to charge only when you had a surplus of rooftop solar in your house so that your car would be essentially filling up for free, you could do that with the Home Assistant integration, but you couldn't with the Volkswagen app. There are a number of different things that you were able to do with Home Assistant that you cannot do with the official Volkswagen app. A lot of people chose to use that. And what Volkswagen did is they closed off their system so that you cannot use any other application with your system. You can only use the Volkswagen app. But now they've decided to do one better. They've decided to make it so that not only can you not use their car's connected system unless you're using their app, you also now have to use a very specific operating system in order to use their app. So their Android application is not working if you use any other operating system on your phone that is based on the Android open source project. You have to be using the manufacturer's applied image in order for it to work, which is a very big problem because, as I'll link down below, there are a number of things that Google Play Services does on your phone that act essentially as spyware, and many people want to be able to use Android. They just don't want Google spying on everything they're doing all the time because that's just like, no, I paid for $1,000 for the phone, it's mine, and other operating systems allow that. One of them is GrapheneOS. A GrapheneOS user was having issues with the Volkswagen app, and they contacted Volkswagen, and they got this reply on the discussion forum. Hello, thank you for contacting Volkswagen Digital Services. Please note that the use of the Volkswagen app is only supported on iOS devices and Android devices with supported operating system versions. On devices which alternative operating systems, so-called custom ROMs like GrapheneOS, LineageOS, or other solutions are installed, limitations or a lack of functionality of the Volkswagen app may occur. These systems are not part of the supported application environment of Volkswagen for the Volkswagen app, which is why we unfortunately cannot offer technical support in such cases. The reason for this is that the Volkswagen app relies on security-relevant system components and certified Android standards to ensure reliable and secure use of our digital services. So, yeah, not only can I not use my application with it, but when I use your application, I have to use the manufacturer's operating system. There was a lobbyist, his name is Charlie Brown, and I remember him saying that if you allowed right to repair to happen, that people would start, these evil repair people would start pre-installing TikTok onto customer phones. And what I found funny is that very shortly after he did that, if you bought a lower-end Samsung phone, it actually came with TikTok pre-installed on it. There's a reason that people install aftermarket operating systems, not only because they don't want TikTok pre-installed, but also because in many cases they are genuinely more secure. As I went over in this video that I did a few years ago, GrapheneOS, the greatest mobile OS of all time, GrapheneOS is in many ways more secure than stock Google Android that comes with your phone. There were many times that the Graphene operating system team has actually made fixes to Android that Google looks at and goes, wait a second, why don't we think of that? That does make Android more secure. Thanks. And those features wind up getting featured upstream in the Android open source project. Because Android is an open source project, there are many people, whether it's LineageOS, used to be CalyxOS, GrapheneOS, and many others, and these forks are each unique in their own way. And if you wanted to actually support those forks that are more secure, rather than just having a blanket ban on all of them, you could simply use the standard Android hardware attestation API and permit their official release signing keys. The GrapheneOS project says, and I quote, that excluding this is a business choice, not a security requirement. If an app wants a genuine hardware-backed guarantee, there's already a better tool. The attestation compatibility guide says that a developer can support GrapheneOS by using the standard Android hardware attestation API and permitting their official release signing keys. This is a better approach than Play Integrity because it can whitelist the keys of alternative operating systems. If you want to understand what's failing here, the check behind the certified Android standards is remote device attestation. On Android, the dominant implementation is Google's Play Integrity API, which Google describes as a way to confirm that requests come from a genuine and certified Android device. When an app calls it, Google returns a device integrity verdict in 3 tiers: meets basic integrity, meets device integrity, and meets strong integrity. An app's server can refuse to act unless it sees the tier that it demands. Now, GrapheneOS does meet several of these requirements, like having a locked bootloader and verified boot, but since it replaces the manufacturer's operating system with its own design build, it's not going to work. That does not mean that GrapheneOS is in any way less secure. You are more secure putting GrapheneOS on your Android phone than you are using the stock shit that's filled with spyware. And again, look at the studies down below if you want exact details on the data that is leaving your phone when you use stock Android. Now I know what you're thinking. Lewis, haven't you said things about how you're deleting GrapheneOS and not using it anymore? And yes, I have. I had a really, really weird conversation that made me uncomfortable with somebody on the team, and I stopped using it. I have never said a word about the operating system actually being insecure. If you listen to the words in that video, I have said that I believe it is a genuinely secure operating system. And as long as one of the proprietors of the operating system doesn't think that you're trying to kill him, you're probably fine. Somebody doesn't have to say nice things about me for me to say nice things about them. Nor does somebody have to like me or respect me for me to agree with them. That's not how this works. We're adults. What do you think I am, a member of Congress? I'm not a coding expert, but from the people that I speak to that I trust, the code that they ship is more secure than the code that Google is shipping. You're getting a more secure phone when you use GrapheneOS, not a less secure phone. This has nothing to do with that and has everything to do with trying to lock people into their ecosystem. Last year, Google tried, they kind of poked a little bit to see how can we lock down the ecosystem a little bit more, and I went over it in a video, and this is the direction that it's going in now. There's going to be this type of attestation to ensure that, okay, you know what, fine, you're allowed to use other apps, but if you actually want to be a part of the real world, you can't. And this is the thing that gets me with open source. And the reason that when people would hear Aaron at Fudo say that open source is losing, they would get very, very offended and go, don't you understand that open source runs the world? Every web server uses Linux. Android is open source. And it's like, yeah, no. All the servers run Linux so that Microsoft and Apple and Adobe and Amazon can serve you closed source garbage that sucks up all of your data that they can change the price on at will using their Linux server. When you see these large companies giving a lot of money to the Linux Foundation, when you see them giving money to a lot of these open source projects, they're, in my opinion, just my opinion, they're cherry picking the shit that's going to be good for them. They want Linux to run their infrastructure, and they want that shit to be open source and cheap and free, as easy as possible to use, so that they could serve you as much garbage as humanly possible. The Android open source project is technically open source, but if you actually want to use a banking app, if you want to connect to your car, if you want to do anything, they're setting up a system where there's so many little closed source components built on top of the open source component that are necessary that you technically can use the open source version. We have the ability to say that it's open source in quotes, but it's open source in quotes, and that all the elements that you need, if you want to be able to do online banking, if you want to be able to enjoy online content, if you want to be able to turn on the air conditioner in your car, will only work when you add on this closed source spyware layer. And that's what it is. It doesn't make you more secure. Look at the links that I put down below on all the different ways that Google Play Services spies on you, and tell me that that's making you more secure having that installed in your phone by default. What GrapheneOS does, which actually makes it more secure, is it takes Google Play Services and says, if you want this on your phone, you could put it on your phone, but it's no longer going to have administrative privileges. You get to say whether this shit has elevated permissions or not. You get to say whether Google Play Services has the ability to operate outside of the sandbox. You get to say whether Google Play Services gets to see what you're doing in other parts of your phone. That's a good thing. They're taking Google's spyware and they're saying you are limited so that you cannot work as spyware on the phone. That's good. That is more fucking secure than stock Android. And again, this is a business decision. This is not a security decision. Imagine if you were going to install an application and it said, I'm sorry, you're using Arch instead of Ubuntu. You're not going to work. That's what they're doing. And that's fucking ridiculous. I hope that you see this for what it is. They're trying to move Android in the direction of Google having control over everything while simultaneously being able to say that they're open source because they still have this little shell of a project that I guess you could use if you want to use a Chromium web browser and I don't know, maybe nothing else. I was on the Swiss train the other day. I forget if it was April or May. I was on a train in Switzerland and I wanted to get a monthly or a weekly pass instead of using the standard SBB app and paying $10.70 every time I wanted to travel for 10 minutes. I wanted to get one of the monthly passes. And I forget what I went through. It was like a month and a half ago that I did this. But I remember going through everything. And I forget if it wanted my ID or some more information. But at some point, I was not able to complete the verification process that I needed to get the monthly or weekly pass, at least in the rabbit hole that I had went down in the app, because I needed to have Chrome web browser installed. And on my phone, I had Firefox and I had Brave. I didn't have Chrome. But I needed to use either Safari or Chrome. And at some point, I just said, I was at the point of thinking, is it worth installing Chrome for this? I'm like, no, fuck that. I'm not going to do that. This is the direction that this is moving in, which, yeah, if you want, you can use open source software on your phone. But if you want to buy the train pass, you got to install Chrome. Fuck this. Fuck the direction that all this stuff is going in. You can't say that open source is winning. Open source is not winning if you have a separate fucking water fountain for people who use open source and people who use the closed source. That's what this is. Oh, you want to be able to enjoy all the features of it? Install this. That's what I see this as. And honestly, I think that's the way they'll explain it to people. I didn't really think of that until I started doing this video. Oh, you want hardware that doesn't spy on you? This water fountain is for people that use software that spies on them. Fuck that. What if I want to use my software? What if I want to use my operating system on my computer? Who the fuck are you to tell me what operating system I use on my computer? And who the fuck are you to say that I have to have closed source spyware on my computer in order to access what I bought and paid for? And frankly, if Volkswagen did not have this requirement when they actually sold me the car, could you actually go back to the dealership and say, listen, when you sold me this, I had the ability to use Home Assistant with my car, and now I don't. I want a rebate. I want a refund. If we lived in a just world, I think that would be possible. The gym that I go to enforces that you use their app. There's one gym that I went to that allows you to take a picture of a barcode so you don't need an app on your phone. You can just show them your camera roll and immediately this is right there. But Gold's Gym has this rolling barcode thing so you can't even screenshot it. You have to use their app. And if you look at their reviews in the Play Store, let's just say I'm not the only one that has problems with this piece of shit. I've never gotten this thing to work there regardless of what phone that I'm using. But imagine getting to a point where, oh, you want to use the gym? Well, listen, open source exists. But you have to use the closed source thing if you want to use the gym. Open source exists, but by the way, even though your web browser that you have on your phone is 100% capable of rendering all of the content on our site, we're not going to sell you a train pass unless you use Chrome or Safari. We're getting to the point where it's like, yeah, technically open source software works, but they're adding all of these little closed source libraries onto it, and they're creating their own little ecosystem and pretending that it's about security so that they can say that they have open source software available while trapping you into all this bullshit if you want to live like a normal citizen. I think the GrapheneOS team is completely on point here. We are moving towards a world where if I want to buy a fucking train pass without getting ripped off every single time I take the train, I gotta choose. Do I want to pay retail rates for the train? Or do I want to give up my principles and install Google Chrome? You want to be allowed to use this water fountain? Install Chrome. It's fucked up. We had civil rights. At some point, like software rights. Truly. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye now.